102.3 The Core, the Ether Report. We just came back from Common, Rewind, and then we went into The Neighbor featuring Lil Herb. This is a record that we spoke to nauseum, one of the standout records of the album.
Just to add, since I do have a lot of the samples here that were for the project, The Neighborhood contains a sample from The Other Side of Town by Curtis Mayfield.
Nice. That record was perfect. There was nothing, that record and Kingdom, perfect songs for the concept of this album. A reflection to the T of what this album should have been throughout, but was not.
Agreed.
Okay, I want to discuss features because he had a lot of them, right? For those that don't know, Common, great friends with No ID. No ID has his own imprint in Def Jam, Artrium. That's his imprint that these artists are signed to. Elijah Blake, Jhene Aiko, Vince Staples, Big Sean, all artists signed to No ID's imprint. Also, if they are also part of the Def Jam roster, that means Vince Staples, Big Sean, and Jhene Aiko. No ID also A&Rs their projects. So this is a product of Common and No ID, their outstanding relationship, and No ID bringing in his small village of artists that he's polished from nobodies into superstardom. Jhene Aiko has just blown up. We are watching Vince Staples turn into a young legend. No ID has groomed all these artists, including Common. So I think the dopest part about this entire album is that most of the features, if not all of the features, are all in-house to some extent. Is it just me, or did the features feel like the most important part of this album?
Definitely the most important part of the album. From every verse, everybody stood out. I think the features are what made the album memorable, because it's like he has Lil Herb on a record killing stuff, and it fits perfectly in what he's trying to do, bring back, show what's going on in Chicago for real. And then he has like Vince Staples, so he's touching the youth, and then he's also putting Big Sean on a record that has the most commercial appeal. So definitely features are the most important thing to this album.
As far as features, I know off air we were talking about how, like, you know, Common can kind of, he's like the uncle on this album. He's sitting back and he's kind of giving his perspective on, you know, his time in Chicago and his experiences. But I feel like what really makes the situation and the whole concept of the album really real is the features, because it gives the point of view from the younger side of the people who are actually living the life, or, you know, other artists like, you know, Vince Staples or Jhene Aiko. And it's like, you know, they go through these experiences too, where they're from. And it kind of just, you know, it kind of ties it all together to me, because I feel like if it was just Common on this album for most of the tracks, I probably wouldn't have listened to the whole thing straight through.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I was talking about with, you know, how I defined the concept of the album, is that here's his perspective, but here's his perspective from the younger group, and that's how they see it, that's how they're living it currently. And I think without the features in this album, it's just an older man talking about life, which I know sounds terrible to put Common in that category.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
I mean,
do you know what I'm saying?
I do agree with you. It does bring.
Almost felt like it just sounds like an old man rambling in rhyme. Like he'll walk by him in the train station and be like, "Yo, man, you should think about being a poet or something. That sounds pretty good."
I was really impressed by Vince
2 quarters.
Staples though, and I did like his second track, which was on the deluxe side.
Listen, Vince Staples out-rapped the second best verse, which was Vince Staples.
yeah.
Right? It's funny that the Ether Report, we spoke about this kid's potential.
Yeah.
We only heard 2 verses on this album, but I am absolutely excited to hear his EP. So I want to talk about features, because do we categorize Malik Yusef's poem as a feature? As a rap feature, because if it was a rap feature, to me, it was the most perfect, accurate, painted picture of what this album was about. He bar for bar, they all tied together. It almost felt like Ab-Soul. When you're listening to a line and you're like, oh, that makes sense because the other line is about that. He chronologically went from 1 through 10 and named every number from 1 through 10 in a 3-bar span. Just for you rap nerds out there that didn't catch that. He also discussed the climate of Chicago and had mentioned a lot of things about that were literally happening in Chicago at that time. If you're not a Chicago native, it would have went over your head. This is one of the verses that I literally had to go to Rap Genius and figure out what he was talking about, and it was perfect.
Yeah. Like he has line, like it has substance, but it also has technical skill. Like he has a line, he said, "Are these celebrities way too shy to be loyal to the town?"
Yes. Yes.
And if you don't get it, the Shy reference to Chicago.
That's what I'm saying. But he did that in almost every line. I could literally feel my body levitating and thinking, Common done messed up and let all these guys on this album because it made him not sound that important. And we're talking about Common, right? We're not talking about a B-rate lyricist. Can I just point one specific part out? On Speak My Piece. First of all, that production was terrible. It did sound like a Fruity Loop sample that came without the Biggie Small sample. And the tambourines were a very terrible rendition of what Timbaland would have done to that record. Was Common freestyling in a second verse? If he was freestyling, what was this freestyle about? Because it made no sense.
No, I've heard him freestyle. That wasn't it, because he always goes off the top.
He was literally rambling on that record.
But it sounded like it. Yeah, it definitely did. And for people don't know, that Biggie sample obviously came from Hypnotized.
Yeah,
which was
it must have been Hypnotized to put that record. It felt like this
out of all samples to pick from Biggie, I could have picked 1,000 different types of Biggie samples.
Let me say something. If I take this entire 10-track album and I give them a rate of each individual song a 1 through 10, this record was like a 2. It didn't belong on the album, didn't fit conceptually, had a 4 sample. No ID gave one of the most booty beats I've ever heard on a Common record. Common didn't even rap well on it. The record didn't have to exist in the album.
Well,
I
don't know. But
all right, hold on. I actually have a list of songs that I could live without.
Yeah.
And this is an EP.
And I got songs that I could put in from the deluxe inside the album.
Do you really? All right, what are those songs?
Out on Bond.
7 Deadly Sins.
7 Deadly Sins, absolutely.
If he would have took those bonus records and put them in place of Speak My Piece and Diamonds, I guess, you would have had a more cohesive...
Was there a Biggie sample in 7 Deadly Sins?
Yes. And it was an ode to 7 Deadly Sins, which was
the
also
the 10 blank commandments that we can't say on air.
I mean, you had played a song.
Shush. We don't want them to know about that.
Bitches get stitches.
How'd you guys feel about Real?
Can you
as dope as that hook was?
Yeah, I do.
Forgettable records.
Yeah.
Absolutely forgettable records.
Speak My Piece are the most forgettable records.
No, Diamond.
Diamond is not forgettable to me because it's not forgettable because bad that it makes me mad.
Yeah, listen. Low point of this entire album, though I know I just went in on Common's rambling second verse on Speak My Piece, and No ID's production on that record. Big Sean on that record did not belong there.
Still there.
I like that Big Sean verse.
Please, I need you to defend this verse so we can all campaign
walk
around.
up in this thing like I'm the real Rockefeller, but you can't take my dame away. Like his wordplay is so effortless.
Can I just say something? They did take his dame away, even though that verse was that line was pretty whack. He did lose his girlfriend.
That is true.
So that line doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
Well, Big Sean,
have you seen the video for it?
But nah, like that song's dope. I mean. He has it's just a fun verse. He sounds like Drake though. That's the only thing. I feel like if Drake would have rapped that verse, it probably would have made it a little bit more authentic to other people. Like people would be like, "Oh, that's a dope verse." But I like the verse. I think that Big Sean probably it's probably one of his better verses in the past year or so.
Wow, I say that the complete opposite because I don't understand. I mean, I don't know. Maybe, on the car ride home, we have to discuss this in depth. Maybe you have to play it from you got to give me your ears or something because I don't know what's going on. But I feel like it was one of his worst verses ever. And the thing is, Big Sean has so much potential for being on Common's album.
He's got great features.
Yeah, he has great features. And for him to get on this album, and being that this album, is a concept album, and to just pretty much say I don't even get how that was in reference to the song.
The question is, did anyone tell Big Sean before he walked into a recording studio to record a song for an album that was about a concept, about his city, about his mentor, produced by his other mentor, that this was about Chicago?
No.
This is to me, this is the product of an EP turned album, and you don't have enough songs for the concept album. And you're like, let's just use the verses we have laying around from all the artists that I signed to my label because we don't have to clear them. They're all my songs.
This was clearly the reach, though. This was clearly the radio reach right here. Like, this was the one where Common was like, well, we got to turn this into an album. The same way you feel about I Speak My Piece. I feel like this was the one, so I feel like that's why he got Big Sean. And this was probably a Big Sean record before everything. The hook and everything. Common just rapped.